um, through the Loma Prieta chapter of the Sierra Club. So I just want to start off our meeting by, again, thanking you all for being here and being willing to learn, and then provide you with a quick overview as to what the Bay Alive campaign is, if maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it or getting involved with it, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So I've thrown up here on the slides our mission statement, but essentially we are a place-based regional campaign that is dedicated to protecting and hopefully bettering the future health and well-being of the San Francisco Bay. And when we say that, we don't just mean us as community members, as people, we don't just mean the wildlife that inhabit it, but all of that together. So essentially, we use actions like education, advocacy, and grassroots activism to hopefully build local and regional support for sustainable solutions to sea level rise. Now, I want to back up a little bit, and I did mention the word regional, and I just really want to emphasize the importance of that, especially in sea level rise planning, and especially in a place like the San Francisco Bay. We as people have maybe drawn all of our county and city lines, and we see them as different parts of the Bay, but as far as nature and the Bay is concerned, and especially as far as climate change and sea level rise is concerned, it is one very big and interconnected system. So it's really important that we take this regional approach to sea level rise planning and mitigation and any actions we're going to be taking against it, because what will happen in one part of the Bay is indefinitely going to impact the rest of the Bay. So for example, if we were to build a seawall along part of the Bay, all that's going to do is maybe protect that community, but it would divert all the water around, and that may be best for that community, but it's not best for the whole Bay. So we want to, again, emphasize and really understand the importance of looking at the whole Bay and what's best for everything and everyone that inhabits it. So next, I just wanted to give us a quick overview onto something we're really working on here at Bay Alive. So that is SB 272. So that is also known as the Laird Bill, which is a new California state legislation that came out at the end of last year in 2023. But essentially, this dictates that all shoreline communities in California must create a sea level rise adaptation plan for approval by 2034. Now, this is a huge deal as it's a legislative piece that is requiring everyone to think about sea level rise, because whether we like it or not, it's here and it's going to continue to be here. So it's really important that we think about what we're going to be doing about it. So more specifically, what this legislation means in the context of the Bay Conservation and Development Commission, or BCDC, as you'll pretty commonly hear it referred to. With this legislation, they were granted the authority to be the agency that is approving these plans by jurisdiction in the San Francisco Bay. So each city or community is going to be submitting their plans to BCDC for approval. And along with that authority also came the tasking of establishing a set of guidelines and criteria that these plans must comply with in order to be given approval. So BCDC is doing that in a document known as the Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan, which for another acronym is also pretty commonly referred to as the RSAP. So a little bit about the RSAP. This is another really important facet of this legislation, because these are setting the guidelines. This is setting the standard and the expectation for what these plans are going to look like and how we're going to be tackling sea level rise moving forward. So this is a pretty big deal, because once this is finalized, regardless of what's in there, all of us and everyone throughout the Bay is going to have to deal with the consequences, or hopefully benefits, of the precedents set in this plan. So it's really important for us and for everyone that we make sure this is going well. So this far, the RSAP, BCDC has been working on this all year. So it's gone through several sessions of internal review, as well as some targeted community outreach. They've identified several community stakeholders that they have been in contact with, but thus far, the review process has not been as public as it is about to be. So we're expecting about around late September that the public draft of the RSAP will be released. And with that is going to be coming a month-long public comment process. So that's a really integral time for community members to say what's important to them and what they're looking for in their future. And it's really important for us that community members, A, know they have this opportunity, and B, are taking advantage of it and getting involved. So as far as Bay Alive is concerned, there are essentially, it can be boiled down to three main priorities we have for an RSAP that we're looking for it to represent. So the first thing we're looking for is that this is something that is going to prioritize nature-based solutions and champion their benefit for both ecosystems and communities. So I want to back up a little bit there and talk about the term nature-based solutions for a little bit. So some of you may be familiar with that, but not everyone probably is. So when we look at ecosystems, they all are given innate and natural abilities to adapt to changes in the environment. But more specifically on as far as we're concerned with the San Francisco Bay, our shorelines are pretty lined with wetlands and really critical habitat. The current state is estimated to be down about 85% of the natural capacity for these critical ecosystems and wildlife. So we are down, but what we do have is really pulling some effort. So these ecosystems, specifically wetlands in the context of this conversation, provide not only their ecosystems with these benefits to be able to adapt, but us as people living on the shoreline and pretty close to it, we also reap a lot of benefits from the health of these ecosystems and making sure they're intact. So just a couple, for example, with wetlands, they're really good at sequestering carbon, so they're lowering our greenhouse gas emissions. They're also really great at insulating and keeping temperatures lower and cool, which is really big, especially in California, as we're experiencing such great heat in the past few years. And then just a really pertinent thing to sea level rise, these are great for flood retention. The soils in wetlands really absorb water, so that's keeping our shoreline communities safe from the flooding that would be there from sea level rise without these critical ecosystems. So it's really important that we look at those benefits and we think about how we can give those ecosystems the resources they need to thrive so that in turn we benefit from their health. So yeah, so that's the first point. And the second thing we're looking for is that it levels the playing field by promoting equitable solutions and furthering environmental justice. So when we talk about this, we are acknowledging that there's a history of injustices in policy and districting that has led to communities being disproportionately burdened by a slew of things, but more specifically for our conversation, they're really disproportionately burdened by climate change. So this history has led to several communities having maybe a higher concentration of contamination or sites that need to be cleaned up, or their lower lying areas. So it happens to be these communities that are on the front lines. They're going to be the first to experience all these issues and all this harm. They're also the communities that historically have not been given the resources and opportunities to thrive in the way that other communities have. So it's really important when we think about the RSAP and we think about planning for sea level rise that we are accounting for every different kind of community and making sure everyone has an equal opportunity to create and plan for a sustainable and healthy future. And then our last thing we're looking for is that it employs phased adaptive pathways that start with nature-based solutions. So when we think about climate change, there's a lot we're figuring out. There's a lot we know. There's a lot to still be learned. But at the end of the day, it's something that is projected into the future. So things can change as they're happening, and we're not entirely sure on maybe how fast things are going to happen or how severe or when. So there's a lot of unknowns. So we just really want to account for those unknowns in the planning process by coming up with different pathways that maybe, depending on the conditions, we can scale up and down from, so that regardless of the situation, we have a plan. And then it's really important for us that, again, we start with those nature-based solutions to see what is the biggest benefits we can reap from what we already have before adding anything into those ecosystems. So yeah, it's about making the most of what we have while we still have it before any severe inundation by sea level rise really starts to put a dampen on our ability to capitalize on these resources.
Thanks so much, Jenna. That was a great background to the issues that we're really interested in right now. So you might wonder, why are we having this workshop right now for writing letters to the editor. And it's basically because of all those points that Jenna was just making. The regional shoreline adaptation plan, the draft of that is going to be coming out in the next month or so. And there's going to be a lot of press about it. There should be. And if there's not, even if there's only just a little, then we want to bring more attention to it. So we will have this kind of unique opportunity and a small window of opportunity to respond to whatever the draft plan puts out there, and try to emphasize the points that Jenna just made about why we are interested in nature-based solutions and regional adaptation. Well, the whole thing should be regional, but cities tend to be insular, and so they may try to write their own plans. But these guidelines that are coming out are going to have to incorporate ways that all the cities and counties and jurisdictions have to work together to make a comprehensive plan. So anyway, the point is just, this is why we're going to, yeah, that's fine, Jenna, thanks. This is why we're going to be focusing on letters right now. It's a good time, and we'll get in shape for writing letters on all kinds of more issues in the future. So what actually is a letter to the editor, you may wonder. It's just a short written submission to paper that is usually a response to an article that they have just published. And it's either emphasizing some information that they had or something that you disagree with, and you're providing more information or perspective to the audience. So summarizing, basically, it's a public comment on a news article. And yeah, that's pretty much what it is. The thing is, it's usually a relatively short thing, so you have to be very focused on what you're writing. Surprising, I thought this was surprising that opinion pages are one of the highest read pages in most newspapers. And you can reach so many kinds of people because they could just be your neighbors, community members, lots of different backgrounds of people. Elected officials apparently read these, and their staff, even if the elected official him or herself doesn't read them directly, they have staff who do and bring it to their attention. Then there's other kinds of public representatives who are on commissions and committees within cities and counties, and then there's BCDC itself, and they may be taking seeing this as input on the guidelines, the draft guidelines that they just put out. I wonder if people who are on the call could mute their mics, because we're getting a little feedback from other people. So that I would really appreciate that. Thanks. So we're trying to promote using these letters to the editors as advocacy tools, meaning we're trying to promote, a environmental perspective, and not necessarily, well, we'll have to just see what kinds of articles come out in response to this. But we want to reach a large audience. All those points that Jenna made about what we're hoping to promote, people that really maybe never thought of nature-based solutions. They just think, oh, we'll just put up another seawall, and or raise the dike, raise the levee. So they don't know that there are other options out there that may be more environmentally friendly. So it will be our job to try to educate them. And also, in doing this, people might be intrigued and think about wanting to learn more about these and other kinds of solutions, and get them involved in local affairs and go to their city council meetings or their county meetings. So as we said before, Bay Alive is local, it's place-based. So our own communities are where we want to influence, and then influence them working together. And then sometimes, even if you don't get your letter published, but you send it in, the papers notice. So they wrote an article and they get, a bunch of letters in response to this. They probably won't publish all of them, but they might publish one, and then they'll see, well, gee, we had 10 letters on this article, and we ought to follow this some more. And they will pay more attention and know that people are caring about this issue. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do you know what a good letter to the editor is? Well, one of the things is that each publication has its own guidelines on how long it can be, but usually they're extremely short, like 150 to 200 words. That's really short. So you can't kind of go off on a tangent and try to say a whole bunch of stuff. You have to be really focused. The other thing is that it's timely in the sense that usually to have the most impact, it should be sent in a day or two after an article is published, because people will have just read the article, and then you want to get your response to that article out there when people still remember that they just read it. Then in terms of you need to be direct. As I said, it kind of ties in with short, because you don't have a lot of time and space to put tangents in there, can't exclude too much distracting information. And finally, unlike news articles, you can actually make them personal. You can put in style, your own style. You can make it saying about how much you care about the bay, how you go out and do hikes along the shoreline and look at the birds, and all those kinds of things that relate to your life and why it's important to you that this topic needs to be addressed. So it can be emotionally driven as opposed to a kind of a cut and dry news article. Next, please. So Jenna will talk about how to write the LTE next.
All right, thank you, Nancy, for all that great useful background knowledge on LTEs and how we're hopefully going to be using those to, again, better our bay and better our ecosystems and health. But first, I just wanted to provide you guys in this training with a potential outline for how to write an LTE. And before I get into that, I just want to first emphasize there is no right way to write. So if you see your topic going in a different way, if anything, this is a great launching point for brainstorming and organizing your thoughts, because again, as Nancy mentioned, LTEs are a very small word count. So you want to just make sure that you are focusing on one linear train of thought and not really overcrowding that with a bunch of other information that may be great, but also could ultimately convolute and make your point harder to identify. So first, I just want to emphasize, maybe focus on like one point within your LTE. So a great way to make sure you're only making one point, because sometimes as you write, you realize there's more were trying to say. But a great way to maybe check in that you are really writing for a central argument is to think about what you're writing and if there's a way to summarize your argument into just one sentence. So that's a great launching point to really make sure you're driving home in yourself what the most important aspects of this argument are. Anyways, so going on to the proposed outline, or at least brainstorming, the first thing you're going to want to do is identify your opportunity. So this is your opportunity to comment. So you're going to do this by mentioning the article you are referencing. This is really helpful not for pretty much everyone involved. So for publishers or editors who are looking at these and approving them for publication, it's really important and helpful to upfront put out what article you're referencing. So everyone's on the same page moving forward about what you're talking about. And then same thing goes for your readers as well. So you just want to start by mentioning the article you're referencing, and this is pretty just cut and dry, pretty simple. It could just be as simple as in article name by person or published on, and then just a quick little, maybe just few words, maybe sentence, slight summary about what that article was originally about, just to make sure everyone's on the same page moving forward. You can also use parentheses to do this as well, but just make sure that you're mentioning it and it's clear what you're talking about. So the next thing you want to do is your hook. So this is sort of taking the opportunity, identifying what your source article was about and thinking about now transitioning how that is related to the point you're making. So for the purpose of what we've been talking about today, this could look like taking the article and then relating it to the health of our shorelines and communities. So I've put up on the screen a list of different topics that relate to these that you may be picking up on in your news. But again, this is not an exclusive list, but I have like the RSAP. So that's something we just talked about. As Nancy mentioned, the public draft is expected to probably gain some heavy media attention at least. So there should be articles to comment on about that. We also have sea level rise, that's always ongoing, as well as groundwater rise and contamination. We also see environmental justice and flooding, as well as development sites maybe on the shoreline that are gonna maybe fragment these really critical ecosystems I was mentioning earlier. So these are all great topics to discuss.
Mhm.
And then the next step in this outline is your problem. So you're going to identify what the issue is and how it impacts maybe one of these three things. So we have community health and well-being, and by that, of course, we mean us people and us communities. So for example, that could be something like, let's say there's a contamination site. So that's going to really impact community health and well-being. We're going to see issues with maybe increased diseases or lots of different kinds of ailments that can happen as a result of that. So that could be your problem you are identifying if you were talking about contamination. Another potential problem is with critical ecosystems and wildlife. So let's say, again, there's a development on the shoreline and this maybe is going to fragment migratory or local birds nesting spots. So you could write about that. And then another thing is ecosystem services. This kind of ties back into what I was mentioning earlier about nature-based solutions. That's looking at those services that ecosystems perform that benefit us. So again, it could be a development on the shoreline, and that's going to fragment our wetlands, and it's going to disrupt any of those benefits that I mentioned earlier, like lowering temperature or flood retention. And then the next step is to propose a solution to the identified issue. So in order to do this, I would suggest going through our three pillars that we kind of talked about earlier. Those were the three things we were looking for in an RSAP. So just to refresh everyone's memories, those include prioritizing the use of nature-based solutions, and then creating phased adaptation pathways. And then again, that's to reduce that uncertainty that is inevitably there with sea level rise and climate planning. And then leveling the playing field. That's making sure everyone's equal, everyone's included. And again, just in terms of following the example we were making previously, again, those are your different solutions. So if there was a contaminated site, that's the topic you're talking about. You talked about how that's going to disrupt community well-being. You may talk about leveling the playing field. You may talk about how this is an area that needs more research. It needs more studies. Call for that. That's a potential solution to an issue like that. And then the last thing to maybe include in your LTE, this is again, maybe dependent, it's quite circumstantial. Not every topic this is appropriate for, but for topics that it is appropriate for, this can be a really important and helpful thing to talk about. So this is doing a call to action. So again, that's if it's appropriate to your topic, but this can look like urging community members to either contact their elected officials, attend a city council meeting, or to engage in a public comment process. That one's especially relevant to what we've been talking about tonight with the RSAP. There's of course going to be a public comment process there. So now that we have gone through that potential outline or just way of thinking, I just wanted to provide y'all with a sample LTE that follows that. So if we look in the top right corner, we have those steps that I just went through, and they are corresponded with a color that is then seen in the LTE, just for ease of following along. So this LTE has been entitled Beat the Heat with Nature. It is in response to an article that was originally posted in the San Francisco Chronicle. And when you go to the Chronicle and check what the requirements are for submission of an LTE, it is a max of 200 words. So this LTE is coming in at a nice 198 words. But anyways, so moving forward, just to look at our opportunity first. So we have regarding heat returns to California, here's what where temperatures could reach triple digits. Porter 11 June 2024. Excessive incessant heat in California is becoming the new norm. So in that sentence, just want to point out, we put the headline there, which was in quotes, and then Porter is the author, and 11th of June is when it was published. So there we get our context for everyone, we're on the same page. And then just this quick, excessive incessant heat in California is becoming the new norm is just a pretty quick summarization of what that article was about. And then transitioning that into your hook, we have, but nature can help us beat the heat. Look no further than your own backyard to find one of our most efficient allies, the SF Bays wetlands. Intact wetland ecosystems cool their surroundings by up to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. These vital habitats act as air conditioners, absorbing heat and trapping greenhouse gases. So we see the transition of heat and then how that relates to the health of our ecosystems. And in the context of this one, we go on to talk about how ecosystem services are there. And so another thing I really want to flag for you guys is we have the direct, pretty tangible fact that it can reduce heat by up to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So that kind of catches anyone up to speed who maybe isn't super aware of ecosystem services, but that's a pretty tangible impact that they can really look at and go, whoa, that really helps your argument seem stronger. And then the next step here is our problem in red. So we have, unfortunately, we've segmented and dismantled the bay's wetland capacity in favor of development, causing the bay to lose over 85% of its natural infrastructure. We can't afford to keep replacing our natural safeguards with office spaces vulnerable to sea level rise. So there, in terms of problems, we picked up on that this is going to interrupt ecosystem services. This is going to disrupt communities from getting these benefits. That's what we're talking about here as the problem. We're seeing those being dismantled and we're losing those services that are going to help us in times where temperatures are really rising. So there we've identified our problem. And then moving along into the green, we have our solution. So restoring and preserving the SF Bays wetlands is not just an ecological necessity, but a pragmatic response to our climate crisis. By investing in these natural assets, we can significantly mitigate the impact of extreme heat, enhance our climate resilience, and protect our communities. So in terms of solution, we went along the lines of identifying, prioritizing nature-based solutions in nature and championing those benefits. So that's just a quick way to identify our problem was that we are losing these ecosystem services, and our solution is to really champion those and protect them and make sure we are recognizing that importance. And then the last step here, we have our call to action in blue. So if you're tired of the heat and worried about the future, urge your representatives to prioritize nature-based solutions. Investing in the restoration of the bay's wetlands is an investment in public health, safety, and well-being. So yeah, there's our little action. If somebody was maybe getting fired up through these 198 words, there's an action that they can take to really help move along. So again, I just really wanted to emphasize call to actions can be really helpful in making an LTE an advocacy tool, transitioning it, from just strictly an educational piece into something that people can do things with and that can generate change. Not that there's anything wrong with an educational piece, but it's really great to provide people with something that they can do, like pretty urgently after learning about an issue. So it makes it seem, more hopeful, like there's things we can do. So next, I just wanted to emphasize for everyone that you guys have got this. In terms of planning this training and coordinating with several different LTE groups, I've definitely learned that this is something that comes with a learning curve. So I just want to urge everyone to not get discouraged and to just keep at it, because even as Nancy mentioned, regardless of a publication, the news outlet you're submitting to is reading this, and they are taking mental notes that this is things people care about. This is what their readers want to learn more about. This is what they want to engage with. So regardless of publication, you are making a difference and someone's hearing your voice. And then I also want to give some more confidence that you don't have to be an expert. It can just be based on personal experience, like Nancy was talking about, how personal experience and emotions can really help to drive and benefit your argument. So don't, of course, feel like this isn't the place for you, because as long as you care about the Bay, that is really strong enough of an argument to be getting involved in this and talking about it. And then also, I just wanted to iterate, you are not alone. because you have our wonderful volunteer, Nancy, of course, who's going to be a point person for you that you can get encouragement for and talk to. And then also you'll have the encouragement and support of the rest of you guys.
Okay, thanks, Jenna. That was terrific. So as Jenna said, you know, you're certainly welcome and encouraged to go off from this, you know, pretty brief introduction of writing letters to the editor and go write letters. But if you're still hesitant and could use more support, we're planning to form a Google group and have each other as support for doing this. So we're going to basically we have the ideas, and we're open to all kinds of suggestions from people about how this should work. That we will set up this email group, and we will flag potential articles that anybody sees, figure out some way of calling people's attention to them. If you're really confident in your writing, you know, if somebody sends an article that you think, wow, I want to talk about this, then you can just send your article in. But if you would like to write drafts and circulate them around in the group, you know, we'll try to set up a mechanism and a timeline for doing that. If people are willing to do that, to suggest edits or other pointers on how to make it more impactful. And then what I'm hoping to do is, even if you decide that you wanted to just go ahead and send them off yourself, or if we send them off through the group, somebody writes something that has been discussed in the group, we want to track who has submitted articles, letters, to which paper and which ones get published. And we'll just have a spreadsheet or some way of keeping track of how much are we having an impact, what are we doing, how are we getting the word out. And then we just want to make it as a positive group to support each other and have fun doing it and educate each other and try to educate more people than even just our, you know, small group that is trying to do this. So get the word out. We're going to have a poll at the end, online poll when we're done here soon. And if you want to put in there that you are interested in joining the Google group, then we will have a follow-up meeting and, you know, discuss logistics of how is this whole thing going to work. And it will be an evolving process because this is new for us. So good. I hope all of you are going to want to join. Jen, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, can you guys just talk a little bit about what other kinds of resources are going to be available for folks who want to join this group and write letters?
Sure. Thanks, Jen. I forgot to say that at least the one thing I know about is that Jen and Jenna put together a spreadsheet that has a list of the local Bay Area publications and a link to their submission guidelines, or how to submit if it's an online submission, or you send an email to the editor or whatever. So she has already put together a starting list, and I think depending on where we get people from around the Bay, we may have other more local papers that people know about that we can add to that list. And Jenna, you probably have other resources. You have a manual of some kind, right, that you've put together. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Again, thanks, Jen, for reminding us, putting that back at the top of the mind. So like Nancy mentioned, there is a spreadsheet that has all the submission guidelines and rules for each publication. Those are public knowledge. You can just look it up, but it's really nice to have it all in one place. So that includes like word limits and maybe other supplemental materials like a bio or something, depending on the publication. Those requirements can change. Another thing also, as Nancy mentioned, I put together a handbook for this group. Specifically, it basically summarizes a lot of the information that we went over tonight. So don't worry if you're trying to get it all into your brain. You will be getting it in a written form as well if you're a part of this group. So that's background knowledge on how to write LTEs. We also have our talking point document. So sort of what I talked about at the beginning about Bay Alive as a campaign and the RSAP. So there's more information there about maybe learning more about our issues and how to talk about them. And then also with that, there's a slew of other resources we have that we're really ready and excited to share with volunteers that we've accumulated from some other LTE efforts that have some other helpful tips and tricks.
And I just wanted to mention one other thing, that in terms of finding potential articles, I mean, I think this is one of the key things, is how to find articles, right? Because I don't sit around scanning through many papers or every day. So I think one thing that I started doing was set up a Google search on a certain topic, and we could sort of make a list of keyword topics and maybe divide up, you know, who's keeping track of sea level rise, or who's keeping track of heat or flooding, or, you know, other kinds of keywords that we would come up with, and then share any articles that are relevant as we go forward. So that's just one idea. People may have other ideas. Thanks. Geeta, do you have a comment?
I have a question, actually. Thanks. That was really a great
So
presentation.
we're not quite done yet, Geeta. Do you want to hold, or do you want to jump in now?
Oh, no. Go ahead. I was just,
Oh.
my only question was, I'm hoping that this will stay as a group, and that people can then, if they see an article, can post it to our group here, and then someone else maybe has the opportunity to write a letter, or more than one person has the opportunity to write a letter. So my question is, will this group be a Google group, in fact, or are you asking people whether they want to join?
I think we're asking people whether they want to join, right, Jenna?
Yeah, the goal from this training is that we've talked a lot about our stance as Bay Alive and the kinds of things that we are interested in engaging with. And if any of those issues or topics really resonated with you, we just want to encourage you to get involved in this Google group. Like Nancy mentioned, we're going to be dropping a link to an online poll where you can say whether or not you would like to be added to this group. And yeah, so the goal of that group is really, so it's just a nice support system. It's a good way for people to gain encouragement and edits and maybe get support in any kind of way they want. Because like I mentioned, it is something that is a learning curve. So I think having a group dynamic is really helpful and can be supportive in fostering success, especially. Yeah, so I really encourage you, if what we talked about today seems like something that is encouraging and gets you fired up, as well as something that's really in your wheelhouse, I really encourage you to at least sign up for the Google group and be involved in the process and see the at least the different coverage that people are sending around, as well as drafts and things that we're getting published, hopefully. Yeah, so thank you, Geeta, for the question.
Yes, and just from one comment that I saw go by in the chat, I think it will definitely be an opt-in. Not everybody who's signed up here will automatically get added to the Google group. You'll need to respond to the poll that you want to be in the Google group, and then we will create that group, that email list. Is that right, Jenna?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So bear with us for a little second. We are going to go over this slide and then get into a Q&A. And then after that is when we will be putting the poll in the chat. So you can put on your own accord if you want to be a part of the group. And again, that's not bound for life either. So if that's just something that you want to try out, I really do encourage you to get involved in joining on the group. Yeah. So moving forward here on the screen, I just want to get back to this. We have different ways that you can get educated and stay involved. This was a pretty high level overview as to what we're doing as Bay Alive, especially with BCDC and the RSAP. So if anything we talked about today really resonated with you and you want to learn more, I just want to encourage you to do a couple things. So the first I would really direct you at is our website. So sierraclub.org, SF Bay Alive. You can also just search up the San Francisco Bay Alive campaign, Sierra Club. So that is a great place to learn more information about our talking points, as well as see projects we're engaged with, and just learn more about the campaign. And then also along the lines of websites, I really encourage everyone to figure out what their local chapter is. Bay Alive is a regional effort. So there's different chapters within the Sierra Club that are working on this. So if you're looking to get more involved in your area, I would suggest that you figure out which chapter you live in, and check out that website for more events, as well as newsletters to stay up to date on things that the chapter's working on, Sierra Club's working on, and importantly, that what Bay Alive's working on. So that's a really great place to just make sure you're up to date. Another thing I wanted to bring to our attention is our AddUp campaign for Bay Alive. So AddUp is an advocacy platform for Sierra Club. We have a page called Keep the San Francisco Bay Alive. And on there, there's a lot of good stuff. We just put up a new petition that is going to BCDC commissioners. And it is essentially covering those 3 points, those talking points, and getting it sent to them and put in front of their faces so they're aware that this is something people are looking for, and it's really beneficial for our communities that these things get incorporated. So I would urge you to go on to AddUp. And then another great thing about AddUp is once you engage with our campaign, so for example, if you sign that petition, send off that letter, you'll also be getting action alerts. So for example, anyone who had signed our petition before this got an action alert that we're holding an LTE workshop. So those are just short little email blasts that will let you know that either there's an event that you can go to or a new action. So like that petition was also an action alert. So that's just a great way to be involved and learn of things that you can be doing. And then another thing I just wanted to put in front of y'all is the RSAP educational webinar we are hosting, Bay Alive. So on September 11th at 7 p.m., we are holding an educational webinar that will be going over the RSAP in far more depth than I went over it tonight. So if there was more you wanted to learn about that, or anything I said piqued your interest, I would really encourage you to look for this educational webinar. Registration will be open pretty soon, and you'll be able to learn a lot more. And then that's also 2 parts in a series. So like we've been mentioning, the public draft is expected pretty soon, towards the end of September. So after that release, we're also going to be holding a second part to this where you can learn how to get involved in a public comment process, and how to deliver an effective public comment, as well as what is actually in that draft. So that's just some great resources if you're wanting to engage in that process. And the last thing we have on here is if you're looking to just connect with nature and look at what we are protecting and why we're protecting it, I would really encourage you to look at outings or join an outings group. Again, that's something that is more chapter based. So again, knowing what chapter you're in is a great way to find events and outings to get involved with and build a community and a greater appreciation for our bay and protecting it. So I guess if there's any questions, we'll be taking those now. If you can raise your hand or drop it in the chat. Yes, Robert.
Is there any link between the Sierra Club and, say, the Save the Bay organization?
We're different organizations, but we are aware and working in the same space and working on a lot of similar issues. But yes, we are different orgs, but kind of work on and engage in very similar things.
Well, I know there's an overlap, but is there any coordination, say, around the RSAP with Save the Bay, so people aren't, duplicating efforts, but, contributing and streamlining those efforts?
That's a great question. If there's anyone here who maybe knows more about that or has a better question, I invite you to jump in on that.
I can take that question. We do often work with Save the Bay. I'm not aware that they're doing any letters to the editor campaigns. I think most of the focus of their work has been on restoration projects, volunteering to help with restoration projects, and they also do some lobbying. But we do talk to them very frequently including about the RSAP. And we have they are on the advisory committee to BCDC along with some of our Bay Alive leaders for developing the RSAP. So they interact quite a bit over this same subject matter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you very much, Jenna and Jennifer and Nancy. This has been fantastic. Exactly what's needed. So my question actually harks back to the beginning, and it's a little bit tangential. But the legislature that you mentioned, I know Santa Clara County doesn't have, only has bayfront land. But does that legislature apply to the Pacific Coast as well? Since I'm in San Mateo County and we have two coasts.
Yeah, the SB 272 at large is every shoreline community in California. As far as I'm aware, the main difference there is the authority. So BCDC's in charge of the bay facing areas. And then I believe the Ocean Protection Council is the authority on the coastline of, what's that? That is
Okay.
Pacific Ocean, but yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
California Coastal Commission.
Oh, California Coastal Commission.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, is there any more questions or are we good to move on? All right. If there's any more questions, feel free to just hop them in the chat and hopefully someone will respond to them. So the next thing I wanted to do is this exit poll. This is what we've been talking about opting into the Google group. So of course, everyone who is here and everyone who signed up for the event won't be opted into this group. But again, I really encourage you to get involved with this group, or at least, you know, be in the conversation, be in the know. So the Google group's a great way to do that. So if I believe it just got dropped in the chat.
Yes.
Yes, it did. So if y'all want to take a couple minutes to fill that out, that would be really helpful. And yeah, I just want to thank everyone for coming again. Feel free to fill out that form. But yeah, thank you so much for attending.
Yes, thanks everybody, and I hope to see you all in the Google group in an upcoming meeting that we'll figure out how to organize. Thanks.
And we will send a follow-up email to everybody here with the copy of the slide deck as you were asking for. I'm going to keep the meeting open for about another minute in case people are scrolling through the chat trying to find links, but we will also include all those links in the follow-up email.